What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and we are back with yet another playoff run. This is our third time in the playoffs as a franchise. Unfortunately, in Season 2 and in Season 3, we were eliminated in the first round, so we obviously weren't able to progress at all. But this season is the time for us to finally make our step forward, and in doing so, we have to defeat the powerful Cheeseboy628 for the third time this season. So we have had some pretty good success against him this season, but he's still an amazing battler. His team is very threatening, to say the least, and it's going to be a dogfight to the end, so we're just going to have to see what we can do. But while this is the third time we played him this season, I haven't really given a full rundown of my thoughts as to what he can actually bring against me, because I haven't wanted to give him any extra ideas as to how to defeat my team. So in the analysis section of this video, I'm going to go into more detail on his team than I have probably in any of my videos in the past, as this is certainly the last time that I'll face Cheeseboy this season. There's no reason to keep anything covered up. So just fair warning, the team analysis and team building process is going to be a little bit longer than usual, and if you're not into listening to that, then I'll make sure to indicate in the description below at what point the battle will start in this video. So feel free to skip to that if you wish to, but here we go. So looking at his full team in extensive detail, he has Manaphy, Thunderous Eye, Latias, Bisharp, Gengar, Magnezone, Diggersby, Hawlucha, Diancie, Sunkern, and Mega Medicham. So his team is hyper offense, and he's been playing it as such, of course. And the thing about Cheese is that he's a little bit predictable in his preparation game, in that he is going to default to standard Smogon sets. So in building my team, I'm going to definitely be keeping that in mind and making sure that I have solid answers to every standard Smogon set that is available for all 11 Pokemon on his team. So that's what I'm keeping in mind as a baseline for my preparation in this game. But I also have to respect some other options, as Cheese has gradually been improving in his preparation game throughout the season, and by improving I mean he's starting to deviate a little bit from the Smogon normal. So I have to still respect those sets. I don't think there's certain sets that I don't think he is quite capable of bringing at this point, but they still need to be respected, as I have lost my past 2 playoff games, and I have no intentions of losing this time, especially because I feel like I have a good matchup overall this time around. So looking at his team in a little more detail, Manaphy. Manaphy is known for the Tail Glow Calm Mind set, or Tail Glow or Calm Mind sets, and Cheese has brought both in the regular season, and I feel my team is plenty capable of handling either of those. Now I do have to respect a couple other options for Manaphy, as I believe Cheese in the past has run a Salakberry Manaphy set, which probably would be coupled with something like Substitute, so that's something I have to keep in mind, as a Substitute Manaphy, definitely even sub Tail Glow could be very threatening against my team, so I need to make sure I have something like that checked. And he has run a Choice Banded Manaphy during the regular season as well. That was, of course, for Hoopa Unbound, so it's not really, a threat to my team per se, but he has been known to be a little bit creative with his Manaphy, so that's something that I have to keep a close eye on and have multiple checks for on my roster. Now, Thunderous Eye, he has had a little bit of unpredictability with, in that he has run both physical and special sets. In the past, he has been known to run leftovers on his Thunderous Eye, so if I don't see leftovers, then I definitely have to be alert in an upcoming match, as Thunderous Eye is capable of running, of course, Life Orb is capable of running Expert Belts, Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, even Choice Banded if it wanted to run Wild Charge and the like. So Thunderous Eye can be an issue as well if he brings something a little bit unpredictable. Latias is something that I don't think he's really used to its full potential this season, and that Latias can run a very effective Calm Mind set, Sub Calm Mind Roost. It can run a Stored Power set. It can be just a defensive support set with Thunder Wave and Roost and Defog, stuff like that, and of course it can just be a nuke set with Life Orb, Draco Meteor, Psyshock, and stuff like that. So all those sets actually could be pretty threatening to my team, except for the fact that I do have Clefable and Jirachi, both of which handle Latias pretty well. So Latias not the biggest threat, but those are all possible options here I have to be thinking about in building my team. Next up is Bisharp. He's brought it every time against me, and I would fully expect him to bring it again, because it really does have a very good matchup against my team, as it's probably his best response to Clefable. If I wanted to bring in Calm Mind Clefable, Bisharp definitely is just going to knock that out of the water. Clefable's not going to be able to hold its own against Bisharp, unless I ran something like a Focus Sash or a Babiri Berry, which is the Steel Resist Berry. So Bisharp is a pretty big threat. It's also one of his only 2 rockers on his team, Diancie being the other one, so I think he's going to be bringing Bisharp, and considering how much pressure I put on Diancie in the previous matchups, I don't think he's going to bring Diancie, so Bisharp is probably going to be a stealth rocker, meaning is probably going to be on a focus sash, so that's something I'm going to, an assumption I'm going to operate under in my building. Next up is Gengar. Gengar, as I mentioned in the first video of my battle with Cheese, is probably the biggest threat to my team that he has on his roster because it is capable of running a moveset that can hit my entire team for super effective damage. If you run something like Shadow Ball, Hidden Power Ice, for the Gliscor that is, Sludge Bomb, and I don't know, Focus Blast or something like that. That hits pretty much everything very hard. I guess Focus Blast isn't really necessary. It's just good for Lucario, but you know, Shadow Ball does a lot to that already. Anyways, Gengar is very powerful against my team. So just with that in mind, I think it's necessary for me to bring Sneasel, just because Sneasel matches up relatively well against the rest of his team, just due to the fact that he is pretty frail overall, and Sneasel is in a very good speed tier against Cheese's team. But just having Pursuit is a necessity against this Gengar. And actually, believe it or not, in my Week 10 matchup against Cheese, the one that I really didn't describe my team building for very much, I did not bring Pursuit on my Sneasel, which I thought was kind of funny because that just happened to be the match that he didn't bring Gengar, so that kind of worked out pretty well. But anyways, Magnezone is the next mon that I want to talk about here, and Magnezone is something that I definitely am expecting to come this week, and that's because last time around I swept him with an SD Lucario. Now, Scarf Magnezone is a solid counter to Swords Dance Lucario, and I think he realizes at this point that he really doesn't have good answers to an SD Lucario, so I am 100% expecting the Scarf set. And with that in mind, I have a couple options. I could run a special Lucario with Vacuum Wave, which could easily blow back. It wouldn't OHKO, I guess, but it would do a solid chunk of damage to Magnezone if he wanted to try to trap me in that way. Or I could even run a Shed Shell Lucario. Both of those are options here. Or I could just not bring Lucario and let him over prepare for it. So a few options to work with there, but I do pretty fully anticipate Magnezone coming this week. And it might even come in conjunction with Thunderous Eye for a double Electric Core, as I haven't shown any willingness to bring my Gliscor to stop maybe a double Volt Switch Core, even though Gliscor's matchup is really pretty good against Cheese. It just loses a little bit of momentum against him, but I do think Magnezone is coming this week for sure, regardless. Now, Diggersby. Diggersby is something that I don't understand why it hasn't come in either of the first two matchups against me, because if you look at my roster, what's my switch in to a banded Diggersby? I don't have a switch in. I just die. Clefable cannot take, well, it can probably take one banded return, but I can't OHKO it with anything else unless I'm like Specs Focus Blast, and that's just not going to work out. Diggersby's Earthquake easily OHKOs Jirachi. I believe I have to have a Shokaberry to be able to survive even a Scarfed Earthquake from a Diggersby. Tentacruel gets blown back. Defensive Gliscor can't take two banded hits. It really doesn't even appreciate a Scarf Diggersby return. Breloom blown back, Talonflame blown back, Lucario, everything else is blown back on my team. Even Wobbuffet, fully defensive, is 2-hit KO'd by an Adamant Choice Scarf, or Adamant Life Orb Diggersby's return or Earthquake. So Diggersby's an enormous threat to my team, and the only way I can really keep it off balance is if I have momentum and I have all priority options on board to be able to take it on. So Diggersby is a huge threat to my team, and it didn't come in either matchup, so I really don't understand the thought process behind not bringing it against me. Maybe he was fearing Gliscor, maybe he was fearing Wobbuffet trapping, I don't really understand, but I'm going to operate under the assumption that for the playoffs, maybe he's just been saving it for the playoffs. And if he's saving it for the playoffs, then alright, I'm going to be ready for it this time. And I think I actually underprepared for Diggersby a little bit in the previous matchups. And he just didn't bring it, which was pretty fortunate for me. But this time I'm not going to prepare for it, and I will be ready for pretty much any Diggersby set that he could bring. Next up, Hawlucha. Hawlucha has an awful matchup against my team. I'm not really going to go into too much detail about it, as it really can't set up on anything. Once it does get set up, it's weak to a lot of my priority options. So Hawlucha, I'm honestly 100% convinced won't be coming. Diancie is kind of his centerpiece to his team in that it's his designated switch in when he's in an awkward position. The thing is, as I mentioned earlier, I have fed off his Diancie in both matchups. In the first matchup, I trapped it with Wobbuffet and just took it out, allowing for a Heliolisk sweep in the end. And in the second matchup, it literally was useless. It was never able to come into the game until after Lucario was already at +2, and it just died to a bullet punch. So Diancie has been useless against my team, and I think For that reason, he's not going to bring it this week. And what that does is that opens the door for Talonflame to come in and put in a ton of work against the rest of his team. He has no other answers to Talonflame on his team. And I know he's been bringing Diancie specifically for Talonflame in the previous matchups, so now is the time for Talonflame to show up. Then Sunkern, not going to talk about that. Mega Medicham. Now Mega Medicham is very, very good against my team as well, if he understands or realizes that Mega Medicham learns Baton Pass. Now for those who have this matchup where you have Mega Medicham and you're against a team with a Wobbuffet, Mega Medicham learns Baton Pass. It should never, ever be trapped by a Wobbuffet. It can just escape freely every time. And generally, a team is not going to have a switch for Mega Medicham. I'm fortunate to have Wobbuffet, which can take 2 hits from Mega Medicham, but if I can't trap it, it doesn't matter. So Mega Medicham is able to just plow into Wobbuffet every time I switch in if he has Baton Pass and can escape. But Cheese has not been known to run Baton Pass. He doesn't. I don't think he knows that Mega Medicham can use Baton Pass to escape Shadow Tag from Wobbuffet. So I'm not expecting him to bring that, but I do think he'll have a good plan for Wobbuffet with Mega Medicham. But regardless, Wobbuffet is able to trap a lot of things on Cheese's team regardless, even if I can't just trap Mega Medicham. So just in general, he has a lot of options for my team. I do think if he runs something along the lines of a momentum team, it'll be kind of hard for me to keep up, as if he can just Volt Switch freely with Thunderous Eye, I really don't have anything that can stop him. Yeah, I have Gliscor that can switch in on it, but that's going to be risking Hidden Power Ice. That's not really something I want to do. So if he runs a Volt Switch Thunderous Eye, that's kind of an issue for me. Diggersby, like Choice Scarf Diggersby with U-turn, that's kind of an issue because I can't really switch in my counters or my checks into Diggersby because he's just going to U-turn out and keep the momentum. So just in general, even Baton Pass Mega Medicham works for that. If he can maintain momentum on his side, it's going to be a hard win for me, but if I can maintain momentum on my side, then it will be a very clean victory for me again, just like it has been in the previous 2 matchups. So this was a very long team analysis, but I think I've gone through about everything I wanted to say here. Let's go ahead and hop on over to the team builder, and I'll show you what I've decided to bring to try to pick up our first ever franchise playoff victory. Now the preparation for this game even went beyond the movesets here, as even the placement of my team in the team builder is a strategy in this game. In the first slot of the team builder, I'm going to put Breloom, as Breloom has been my lead in both of the previous matchups, and in both of the previous matchups it was a Focus Sash variety with the same moveset as you see here. Now the thing is, I don't want to run the same moveset 3 times in a row against Cheese. He's way too good of a player. He's definitely going to know how to handle a moveset once he's seen it twice. There's no way he's going to let me get away with the same thing 3 times. So we're going to change it up, but I want him to think that I'm still running the same set. So in the front spot of the team builder, we have Breloom on a Choice Scarf. This is an Adamant Choice Scarf set with enough speed investment to outpace a Timid Thunderous Eye. So it's going to hit 354 speed with the Scarf, I believe. And this thing is very, very strong against Cheese. Now this... I guess the primary reason to have this is that this gives me a secondary chance to Manaphy, secondary check rather to Manaphy, as my only other check, given the team that I brought this time without having like priority spam Lucario or something like that, is the Raikou, and Raikou is probably going to get worn down just because it is my primary switch into several mons on his team, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. So I needed Breloom as a secondary check to Manaphy, and this also gives me a good option in case he brings a substitute set with Manaphy, or really with any Pokemon, as Scarf, Adamant, Bullet Seed coming from Breloom is very, very strong and boosted by Technician. So I think this is going to be pretty good. I also have a very fast Spore option here. Coming off the Choice Scarf, I can just put anything to sleep. I do kind of think he might decide to bring a Safety Goggles Latias this time, because I did reveal that set as a possibility in my last video, assuming he watched my last video. But even in case he doesn't, I guess, having Scarf Spore is a luxury in this game, as putting something to sleep just gains me momentum. It can never lose me momentum, so definitely something that I have in my arsenal. And then having a Choice Scarfed Rock Tomb is also pretty effective, at least if he doesn't bring Bisharp. I do have to keep in mind, though, if he does have Bisharp on his roster, I probably should never click Rock Tomb, at least until Bisharp has gone down, because a Bisharp at +2, as you can see by the team preview here, just blows me back and I would lose. So I cannot let Bisharp get +2 no matter what. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about the Breloom. It's a secondary check to Manaphy, and just in general very strong against his team, as Bullet Seed, Mach Punch, Rock Tomb has coverage for his entire roster. And it's also necessary to have Mach Punch here instead of something like Force Palm, because I want to make sure that I can do damage to Scarf Diggersby if he brings it, because if he does bring Diggersby, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Choice Scarf to check my Raikou. Now next up is the Raikou. Now this set is very bulky, as you can see, with 200 investment in HP. This will allow me to survive 2 modest Choice Scarf Gengar Sludge Waves and be able to 2-hit KO it with Thunderbolt. So that was the idea behind the moveset, and then I needed enough speed to outspeed Thunderous Eye. But just in general, Sub-Calm Mind Raikou with Bolt Beam coverage is incredible against Cheese's team. His only real answer to this are especially defensive Latias, which despite being weak to Hidden Power Ice, still can eat them up pretty well, especially when I only have 84 investment in Special Attack. But the other response would probably be Diancie, and if I can chip away at Diancie with Raikou, that would just make my day. As chipping away at Diancie means Talonflame has a much easier path to sweeping Cheese's team in the end. So Raikou overall is very, very solid, especially because it's a nice switch in to both Thundurus and Magnezone, both of which are very possible Pokemon for him to bring this week against me. So, and then of course it's my primary check to Manaphy, as Cheese has not been known to run like a Wackenberry or even Rendoberry in the case of Breloom Manaphy, so I don't think it's going to be able to resist my super effective options against it. So I think having Raikou and Breloom as my checks to Manaphy should be enough, and Wobbuffet of course can always be a tertiary check to something if it gets a little bit out of hand. So that's my first 2 mons, both of which are very strong against him. And next up is kind of the niche mon of the team, and that is the Sneasel. It has one job and one job only, and that is to prevent Gengar from being an issue for the rest of my team. Gengar comes in, it can get a kill, okay, but then it's going to promptly die to a Pursuit. So as long as Sneasel is around, Gengar is not going to be a huge issue, and at least between at least if I can pivot between Jirachi and Sneasel, Gengar is not going to be able to OHKO, or is not going to be able to escape the Pursuit option, as if I have Jirachi in, there's 2 options. It's either going to be Choice Locked into Shadow Ball, in which case it can KO my Jirachi, or I can slow U-turn, somehow surviving the Shadow Ball into my Sneasel and blow it back with a Pursuit, or it can be a Life Orb set or something, and I guess it can KO my Jirachi if I have Jirachi in at the time, and then I can go straight into Sneasel and just click Pursuit, as there's no way he can survive a Pursuit if he's non-Culpaberry, I believe. So regardless, the combination of Sneasel and Jirachi will allow me to beat Gengar, not because Jirachi can resist any hit from Gengar, just because Jirachi serves as the perfect pivot away from Gengar, such that Sneasel can come in and get rid of it. So I kind of already talked about Jirachi here, but I guess the moveset as well: Low Kick for Magnezone and Bisharp, Ice Shark for Thundurus, Pursuit Knockoff for standard purposes. So then Jirachi, this is a Shukaberry set with Stealth Rock. Primary purpose of this is Stealth Rocks. The secondary purpose of this is to be a check to both Diggersby and Latias. It's more of a counter to Latias, I would say, but this is a good check to Diggersby, as if I can get just a little bit of damage on Diggersby with Iron Head or Drain Punch, then it's easily in KO range from all 3 of my priority options, being Mach Punch from Breloom, Ice Shard from Sneasel, or Brave Bird from Talonflame. So this is pretty essential to that end. But just in general, this is just a great pivot around Cheese's team, as I don't really need this for anything per se except to get up Stealth Rocks. So I can just use this as fodder, and I can do a slow U-turn into one of my huge threats. And once I have that momentum, Cheese is definitely on his back foot, considering the threats that my team can provide against his. So that's the idea of Jirachi. This is pretty much the same moveset I brought last week. I guess I didn't really describe it in too much detail then. So I will say this is EV to outspeed Adamant Mega Medicham, and has enough investment to 2-hit KO a standard Diggersby with Drain Punch. So yeah, that's about all there is to say about that. Next up is Wobbuffet. Now this is a set that I have not brought all season, which I'm kind of surprised at myself by, but Custap Berry is the item of choice here. This is fully defensive as always against Cheese for the Medicham and the Diggersby, but Custap Berry is pretty nice here, as I did a few calcs, and it turns out that after a Fake Out and 2 high jump kicks from Mega Medicham, Wobbuffet is then in Custap range, which will allow me to trap and KO a Diggersby, which is fantastic. It also turns out that after 2 returns from an Adamant Diggersby, Wobbuffet is in Custap range to KO a Mega Medicham with a Custap Destiny Bond. So keeping those 2 options in mind, Wobbuffet is solid here, to say the least, as it theoretically can single-handedly take down both of Cheese's biggest threats to my team. So, or outside of Gengar, of course. So, Wobbuffet is very, very handy this game, to say the least. Now, if I'm not able to pull off a KO on either Diggersby or Mega Medicham due to excellent preparation on Cheese's part, then it still serves as a nice pivot, or a nice pivot into my other mons, as I can easily encore my opponent into any move, per se, and I can either counter Miracle KO my opponent, or if he decides to go for something other than an attacking move, Encore will of course leave the opposing Pokemon useless, as I can go into something like my Raikou, or something like my Breloom or my Talonflame, and do a lot of work there. So Wobbuffet is really essential to this team, and it's just very nice in the case that I can trap and KO Mega Medicham and just make it less of a thing to have to worry about. And now the star of this team, that is Talonflame, on a Muscle Band with Brave Bird, Flare Blitz, Steel Wing, and Protect. This is EV to outspeed. Apparently I'm actually missing 4 EVs. Whoops. Anyways, this is EV to outpace a Choice Scarfed Magnezone. And the extra EV is going to defense here, just such that I can survive a Sucker Punch, survive a Sucker Punch from Bisharp a little bit better, survive just other priority options from his team a little bit better. Now the Protect, of course, is for the Fake Out for Mega Medicham, as if Mega Medicham cannot damage me with Fake Out, it can't touch Talonflame in general, and I would love to see Mega Medicham come in to try to do a bunch of damage to Talonflame with Fake Out, and then be forced to switch out. And the thing is, with this moveset, nothing on his team avoids a 2-hit KO from this outside of Diancie. I don't think Diancie's coming. Even if he has Diancie, it takes like 40 to 45% from Steel Wing, I believe. So it's not going to be appreciating that at all. But with Brave Bird plus Flare Blitz, I am able to 2-hit KO essentially his entire team, unless he with Stealth Rocks up, unless he runs like a defensive Manaphy. So Talonflame is very, very strong, and it's actually going to be my lead in this game, because if he decides to run Baton Pass Mega Medicham, finally, to counter my Wobbuffet, he's almost certainly going to lead Mega Medicham against my Breloom, or the theoretical Breloom lead. So with that in mind, this is the perfect answer there, as it essentially guarantees me a kill immediately in this game, as I can Protect on the Fake Out and click Brave Bird plus Flare Blitz and get a kill. So I think Talonflame is easily the best lead here. I do, however, want to conserve this, or preserve this rather, as it will be almost certainly a win condition late in the game, as he really doesn't have many options to it, especially if he does not bring Diancie. So I think I've rambled on enough at this point about the team builder. You get the idea of what I did. Now let's go ahead and hop on over to the team preview and jump into the battle from there. Alright, and here we are. So the first thing that I noticed when looking at team preview is that, again, there's no Diggersby. So that I'm blown back by this, honestly, but regardless, he didn't bring it. So now my Jirachi really is even more free to just be a relaxed pivot, I guess, around his team, as once I get up Stealth Rocks, his only option to get rid of them is Latias, and Stealth Rocks are great against the rest of his roster, really. So once Jirachi gets his rocks up, he's just a free switch into Lati. It's a free pivot around Thundurus. It's a decent pivot around the Gengar if need be, and if the Mega Medicham is adamant, then I can flinch down that with Iron Head if need be. So Jirachi becomes a lot more free when Diggersby is not around, plus Wobbuffet becomes a lot more free, as Wobbuffet can now be designated to handling Mega Medicham and just seeing if he has a better option to handle Wobbuffet with Mega Medicham than he has in the past. And of course, if all else fails, I can still trap perhaps the Manaphy or the Lati, or I guess even the Magnezone if it's choice locked into Thunderbolt or Flash Cannon or something with the Wobbuffet, and take those out that way. So just the fact that he didn't bring Diggersby, it gives me a lot more freedom with my team. It's also worth noting that he did not bring Diancie or Bisharp, meaning that he does not have Stealth Rocks on his team this time around, which makes Talonflame even more of a threat than I thought it was going to be in the team building process, as I obviously am not bringing a Spinner or Defogger on my team this week. So if he was able to get rocks up with Diancie or Bisharp early in the game, Talonflame would not be really in a position to do much work late game. So that was, of course, the reasoning behind wanting to lead with Talonflame in this matchup, but he didn't bring rocks. and from the looks of it, Talonflame just blows back the majority of his team here. I guess he would have to be a defensive Manaphy or a bulky Latias to be able to take hits from this Talonflame, but I'm going to wear down this Manaphy with my double check and Raikou and Breloom. So overall, Talonflame is looking fantastic this week, and with no Bisharp in sight, he only has one priority option. That is the Mega Medicham. Its priority is Fake Out. Talonflame doesn't care about that. Due to having Protect. So just in general, team matchup looks very, very good. He did bring Magnezone, which tells me that it's probably going to be Choice Scarf or Chople Berry. Chople Berry is definitely an option if he's expecting my Lucario to be coming this week, as Chople Berry and Magnezone will allow him to survive the close combat, assuming I'm not +2 already from Swords Dance, and take me out with a Thunderbolt or something. So Chople Berry is an option. Choice Scarf is more likely, I believe. But yeah, that's about all I have to say at Team Preview. Let's go ahead and jump on into the battle and see if we can pick up that first playoff victory. So he decides to lead off with Thundurus, as I lead off with my Talonflame. Now, I have no idea what this Thundurus set is, and I'm not able to OHKO the Thundurus with a Flare Blitz, so I have no reason to stay in here and risk my win condition. So I am just going to go straight into my Raikou, which is relatively a free switch into this, and he decides to go for the Wild Charge. Now, this was a very interesting first turn here, as Cheese has not brought physical Thundurus more than once or twice in the past 2 seasons, so seeing this was very interesting. This also tells me that just due to the damage output here, this is probably going to be an Adamant Thundurus. I don't know its item yet, I have no way of knowing its item, but it's an Adamant Thundurus, and it's not a boosted damage output, so it's not Muscle Band, it's not Life Orb, obviously, because no recoil, and it's not going to be an Adamant Choice Banded set. So that's some things to keep in mind, but regardless, I do think that even if he does go for the knockoff here, this is a pretty free substitute, so that's what I'm going to go for here, as he decides to switch out into his Magnezone, which is perfect because now this substitute is free, and there's nothing a Magnezone can do to break my substitute because I have so much bulk on this Raikou, and I do outspeed the Magnezone on this turn, so that's also worth noting, as now later on, I know for a fact that this is not Choice Scarf. This probably has a Resist Berry of some kind, and that means that it's a lure for something, and I have to figure out what it is a lure for. I'm still under the assumption that it's probably a Chople Berry Magnezone, but we'll decide that later on, I guess. So he decides to go into his Lottie. It actually eats up the +1 Hidden Power Ice pretty well and goes for the Psyshock, but I know he's going to be forced to go for another Psyshock here because the Raikou is such a big threat to his team, so it's a free switch into my Jirachi, which is a free Stealth Rock, and those are now there to stay as he has no way to get rid of them, and I'm going to go ahead and eat up the knockoff, as I know it's coming, but I have no reason to switch in anything else, and I'm just going to go straight into my Raikou, as 1, it gives me some leftovers recovery, and 2, it's just an all-around good check to the Thundurus. But it turns out this Thundurus is actually Choice Scarf, which is definitely something I was not anticipating here, as I get a minimum roll of Thunderbolt against the Thundurus. But knowing that I can survive the next knockoff and knock out the Thundurus most likely in the following turn, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And down goes the Thundurus. We're off to a nice 6-5 advantage as he goes into his Magnezone. Now here, I make an interesting play, I guess. I don't know if it was my best play, but it worked out, as I go into my Breloom and get critical hit by a Volt Switch from this, and the damage output did confirm that it's at least not a Choice Specs Magnezone, so it's almost certainly a Resist Berry of some kind. But yeah, that's essentially verified at this point, as we already know it's not Choice Scarf unless it's a modest Choice Scarf Magnezone, which wouldn't make much sense because I don't think that outspeeds Lucario. I'm not positive on that. Anyways, he goes into his Mega Medicham on my Breloom, and I'm just going to switch right out. Wobbuffet has one main purpose, and that is to try to handle this thing. So that's exactly what I'm going to try to do here, but he's smart. I figured he would be smart this game as well. He just goes for the Toxic against my Wobbuffet with the Mega Medicham, as I Encore him into that, which is luckily a free switch into my Jirachi. As now, I eat up the Toxic, and he's essentially forced to switch out, as I can just go for the free U-turn as he goes into Magnezone, which is fine. Every bit of damage I get on this puts it in essentially guaranteed KO range from Adamant's Breloom's Mach Punch, but because I'm operating under the assumption, I'm going to pause, operating under the assumption that it's probably a Chople Berry Magnezone, I decided to go into Talonflame instead and just go ahead and click Flare Blitz, as he doesn't have switch-ins to Talonflame. As I mentioned before, he did not bring Diancie, therefore he does not have a switch into Talonflame, so all he has is a check, and that is the Manaphy. So if I can handle the Manaphy, I win this game with Talonflame at this point with rocks on the field. So that's the game plan now. I go straight into Wobbuffet, as it prevents any sort of crazy setup with a substitute or even a Calm Mind set, as I can just Encore him into something and prevent him from setting up any further, and then check it with Breloom, essentially KOing it in the process. So that was the idea. Fortunately for me, this was actually a big turn. I'm going to pause here. So he goes for substitute. Turns out to be probably a sub Calm Mind Manaphy, considering it has Scald. I guess it could be sub Tail Glow, I'm not exactly sure, but regardless, he gets a critical hit with Scald, which actually, fortunately for me, puts my Wobbuffet directly in the range of the Cut Stat Berry activation. So, the critical hit seemingly would be bad for me, but actually was helpful in this case, which I guess is kind of funny that I still get haxed, but it actually works in my favor this time, so I'm not going to complain. But this activates the Cut Stat Berry, and he's locked into Scald, so Destiny Bond comes out, and down goes the Manaphy, and now it's looking very, very good for Talonflame to just come in and do a lot of work, as I believe both Lottie and Gengar are in range, unless he's like a defensive Gengar or a very bulky Lottie. As I have the Protect, he cannot do any damage to me with Mega Medicham, or at least with Fake Out, so now it's just a free Brave Bird. He just has nothing left to take hits from Talonflame, and ladies and gentlemen, we are going to pick up our first ever franchise victory in the playoffs. So we finally did it, and it's a very nice feeling, of course, to finally be able to get over this hump. But Cheese, of course, is a very good battler, and all credit to him for an amazing season. But this is about the Staraptors. We are moving on to the finals to face, guess who? The Atlanta Braviaries, the team that we faced in the first week of the season last season, and of course last season's champion. So we're going to have to go claim the throne from him this time around, and I think we are prepared to do so. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I will see you again next week in the championship. I hope you are as excited as I am. Peace.